Tech and Innovation team joining us from Detroit. Good afternoon, Hannah.
Hi, Jamie.
We had planned to have Carly Schaffner here with us as well. You know, she covers Honda, among other things, but the high winds out here in the Desert West messed with her travel plans. Hopefully she's safely on the ground in LA by now. We're going to have a great conversation today, and we want you in the audience to be a part of it. Say hi in the chat and tell us where you are. It's always fun to see the breadth of our audience. Even better, if you have any questions about CES, put them in the chat. We'll do our best to get you an answer. So, uh, you know, let's start with just kind of the mood of the show. It seems like there was, um, it was a real mix of some positives and some upbeat views and some more tempered views. I guess Anna, let me start with you, and then we'll work around the room.
Sure. So, from reading all of your great work and getting some of your interview quotes and things, it really seems like it's more of an evolution than a revolution this year. The technology advancements, like last year, are definitely more tangible than these pie in the sky concepts and ideas that we had heard about before 2024. It seems pretty consistent with last year, but maybe even a little bit more tempered. But I really would love to know the energy that you guys are feeling on the ground. Pete, what are you feeling?
It's funny. Jamie used the word tempered twice in the introduction, and I think the word that I've heard around Las Vegas this week is mellow. Before you even kind of delve down into some of the technologies, it's pretty easy to get a taxi or Uber when you want to get it this week, and that's a change from previous CES shows. But certainly, I think there's not a lot of big earth-shattering headlines. It's much more about what you said, Hannah, incremental advances, which are very real and tangible in a lot of ways and important, and some really good discussions. I think people are setting their agendas for 2025 here, but it's more about that than this big overriding piece of sheet metal, maybe with one exception. Jack, how about you? What was your read being on the ground this week?
Yeah, it was only my second CES, but in the automotive part of the floor in the West Hall, a lot of room to walk around. I didn't really have to fight too much to take photos, things like that. I did make over to the Central Hall, much different story. That was like being in a subway car. But in talking with some folks in the auto world, it seems everyone's kind of working on strategy now that the election's passed, kind of hunkering down and planning stuff out, and that might explain, kind of like we've talked about, why it's a little bit quieter. But it's still. Trying to get a photo of some cars is still pretty tough, so there's still a lot of interest in some of the things that are shown here for sure. So,
yeah, I would say it's been pretty easy to get around until about today. Today it's getting the last 24 hours it's gotten a little more CES like. Of course, I don't have the long history with the show that Pete does, but definitely it's getting there, and there is absolutely a whole lot of scenario planning going on. Everyone is penciling out every possible tariff scenario, other the EV tax credits, all the things that are up in the air. But again, I haven't been to as many CESs, but the way the Detroit Auto Show used to always be at the beginning of the year, people are excited to see each other. They're back after the holidays. While it may not be the frenzy or the oh wow of the past, it is that New Year vibe that people like, and they really enjoy seeing people from across companies, across the industry. There is, I would say, a pretty positive energy, at least over as the surface, over all of the anxiety that's underneath.
Well, I think along those lines, Jamie, like some of the uncertainty is resulting in, we're seeing some multi-powertrain strategies being shown here and certainly being discussed here, and that's where that policy and uncertainty is trickling down to kind of tangible developments here on the floor. A lot of the automotive suppliers are showing hybrid, plug-in hybrid. I've seen one hydrogen fuel cell, which was interesting because that was such a big headline last year, but people are really considering how they might meet some global standards when it comes to carbon emissions reductions and planning accordingly for various scenarios.
Right. There's definitely uncertainty, but it feels a little more certain, I suppose, than it did a few months ago. At least we know who will be in office in a couple of weeks, even if these companies don't know exactly what the policies will be. It seems like directionally they know where they're going, but the past 3 months or more than 3 months, they really haven't. So it's like many of them probably have to scramble to figure out what they're going to present at the show and how to really frame it as a technology advancement that also aligns with this administration if that need is there.
Yeah, I think that translates to attendance as well, and why we're seeing fewer people is, it was late December, mid-December, like before Christmas. I was still talking to a few people who weren't sure if they were going to be here or not. And I definitely more people, fewer displays overall, but industry people still present, but kind of leaving that decision to the last minute one way or the other.
Well, and Pete, didn't Gary Shapiro tell you on the Shift podcast that they really wanted to bring the attendance down? It felt like at 180,000, it was just too much. And I mean, it can sound like spin, but I think I've heard from Jan Becker at Apex AI. He totally is on board with that. He said, the quality of people was more important than the quantity of people.
Yeah, no doubt. I think they got up to 185, maybe 200 pre-COVID, and that was too much. And I think Gary had said one of the big concerns that he had heard consistently was the price of hotel rooms. And mine's pretty reasonable this year. It's about a third of what I've paid in the past. So I don't know where that supply and demand of hotel room is a proxy for what's going on with attendance at the show overall, or if they've really worked to make that more affordable for everybody.
So let's pivot to, some of the biggest, technology trends. Obviously, automated driving is a big one that perennially out here, right? Pete, what was the show like on that front? Was there anything new? How's it evolving for you?
It's really interesting. There's a lot of cautious optimism about autonomy again. Probably first and foremost with Jensen saying he expected autonomy to be $1 trillion industry at a Monday night keynote, which I thought was big. A lot of talk and some interesting things on the show floor, probably particularly with Oshkosh being a first-time exhibitor here at CES, and they're showing some autonomous and/or automated driving systems in niche applications like airport baggage handling vehicles, fire trucks, dump trucks, garbage trucks. But also out in the real world on the strip, Zoox is testing not just its Highlander test vehicles where they're mapping, but we're seeing their actual driverless robotaxis that have no traditional control. So there is a little bit of reality that I think Zoox plans to start service here in Las Vegas later this year. And we're seeing that pretty close to fruition right now. And Jack, I know you had seen Oshkosh at some point, and or some of the other niche players on the show floor. What was your take on that?
Yeah, so looking at Oshkosh, I mean, their display was interesting because they're big. One of the first things you see is like a giant dump truck, electric dump truck, garbage collector. That's probably the official term. They had a fire truck, but like Pete mentioned, they had an autonomous baggage carrier, which for us that are on the road a lot, you always see these things running around. And I've always kind of wondered, I wonder, when the next step of these vehicles will go by, because they're pretty rudimentary, nothing too crazy. So to see like a concept like that was super interesting. And it seems like a very vivid example of what that tech could look like. And then Oshkosh also had what they called like an airport of the future display, kind of showing like how some of these pieces could work together in an airport setting, which again, for us on the road, it's kind of a cool way to kind of see that. It might not be what we all envisioned with autonomous driving, but that could be something that has a real world impact.
What's interesting is piggybacking on Oshkosh a bit, and if you want a powerful visual as to how this show has changed, we don't see a whole lot of automakers. We already kind of covered it's a quiet year, but in the heart of the mobility hall, which is West Hall here in the convention center, you see Oshkosh, Komatsu, Caterpillar, John Deere. They are like the prime spaces on the floor, and that picture kind of says a lot.
Yeah, it shows how this AV and AI technology really spreads across transportation, which is cool to see. Pete, did you end up taking a ride in the Zoox car?
I did take a ride in the Zoox car. It was very uneventful. So I think that's your best case scenario for ride-alongs, but it was interesting because they did do a little bit of the strip which I think that they had kind of been building toward. And the technology really felt smoother. They've done a lot of software updates since my last ride with them about 6 months ago. So like just kind of the control inputs were really smooth and seamless. They'd kind of also updated the vehicle with new seats. So not very high tech, but more comfortable seats. And one of the most interesting aspects of my visit with Zoox was probably not the vehicle itself, but checking out their operational depot that's a couple miles west-southwest here in Las Vegas. And they've got a 190,000 square foot facility that they didn't say how many cars it could hold, but my best eyeball estimate was that they can fit 400, 500 cars in there. It was huge. It might be as big as West Hall itself. Maybe that's a slight exaggeration, but if I'm exaggerating, not much. Jack, did you check out on the EV side of things? I'm curious who saw the Honda sheet metal. That's kind of our big sheet metal show here. What did you think about Honda?
Yeah, they're really striking. We kind of saw the design direction in years past, what these were going to look like, but to see the prototypes in person was pretty cool. It's definitely a lot different than I think what most Hondas what you think of when you think of Honda. Where I live in Seattle, CR-V hybrids, Prologues are pretty commonplace. These look much different than that. Very avant-garde, very striking. The rear end in particular on both the saloon and the SUV is definitely different. But for Honda, I think it's pretty cool. It's definitely something different, and it did seem to be a lot of interest, a lot of people checking the vehicles out. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out once it comes to market.
Last year I kind of made fun of those concepts. I still think they're a little funny looking, but I do appreciate the fact of doing something different. I think having different looking vehicles on the road is good, and a little, this is such a funny mix for Honda. Because Honda is not usually an outside the box design company. But what is very truly Honda is to have a concept vehicle and the next year come out with the production vehicle that looks almost exactly like it.
And to call it a prototype. That's all. I always love that they call them prototypes.
Hannah, I'm curious from your perspective, that seemed to be the big vehicle, but overall, are you sensing that this is a quiet show as far as EV goes, and that does that relate to the aforementioned policy, adjustments that people are making?
It does seem to be a much quieter EV show. I mean, Honda was the only company besides Zeekr, which is a startup that showed anything, to my knowledge, that showed an EV. So definitely quiet. There were a couple of announcements I saw about charging technology, but again, like startups, not known names, and not any sort of technology that I thought was like a game changer, that was totally new. It seems to me from the stories that I've edited, and if you even just like look at the live blog that we've been updating and connect the dots, it's really a show about partnerships, and we're seeing some of the same names over and over in these. It's like Amazon Web Services, NVIDIA, Qualcomm. Everyone is trying to work with these tech players, and really these legacy suppliers and automakers are trying to stay ahead and maintain their spot in the market with this technology. So that's what I've seen from here, but I'm interested is everyone talking about Qualcomm, AWS, NVIDIA? Are they the big players that everyone's thinking about here?
Absolutely.
I would say yes.
Yeah, it's, and part of it, going back to Jensen Huang's keynote, I mean, huge lines that started hours before the show. It was like if tech was music, this was Taylor Swift's Eras tour, one night only, just huge lines, and it really was like almost a frenzy, and people, and it just set things off. And so much of what people are trying to accomplish, maybe sort of in the incremental progress in, deploying AI within things, so much of it revolves around things like NVIDIA's, system on a chip, and just those faster processing and all that. So yeah, a lot of stuff about NVIDIA and other partnerships. Of course, this all happens at the same time as Honda-Nissan merger, and right. There's a lot of thinking about how the industry needs to rearrange itself.
Yeah, these chip makers have become so prominent. Jackie wrote about Qualcomm and all of the partnerships that they announced. NVIDIA, at that press conference that or keynote that Jamie just mentioned, that there seemed to be like a lot of energy around. Um, Jensen Huang, the CEO, mentioned that each car company might work with us in a different way, but we're working with just about every major car company around the world. So that is a big deal. There's not that many suppliers that can say that. Um, and NVIDIA announced a pretty interesting product called Cosmos. So it uses AI that's underpinned by world foundation models. So it's a little bit different than the large language models that we've been hearing about for a while. These world models use text, image, video, and movement to simulate these virtual worlds. So um, this allows developers to put in their own content, like videos from autonomous vehicle testing rides and things like that. Uber is working with them for some of this image and video data, and they're really NVIDIA is trying to narrow that gap between a simulation and real life, which I think its competitors are doing the same. So that's really interesting to see how they put that into like real world automotive terms for us. Sometimes it's hard for me as an auto reporter to follow all the compute jargon, but when you can really see how it makes a difference in a vehicle, that's when I feel like there really is excitement in the auto community.
I want to jump in real quick. We've got a question from the audience I want to throw out to you all. Um, Asking, are you seeing anything from CES related to how automakers or vendors or others are addressing concerns around cybersecurity and data privacy? Have any of you been hearing that? I don't know that I have heard a lot, but that's why we have more than one person here.
I would not necessarily say that I've seen a lot of like on floor demos or products, but I have heard a lot of conversation on that topic, and growing concern that problems are going to be, imminent. If we're going to make predictions about what we see in 2025, like some sort of, automotive cyber attack or, more sort of ransomware attacks, there's palpable concern that the auto industry in particular and America writ large have fallen considerably behind. It's evident to everybody, and in some ways, the Gen AI advances have lowered the barrier to entry for someone who wants to commit a malicious act. So I'm not necessarily seeing tangible solutions out there, but to the original question, I think there is some significant concern out there, and that is a conversation I'm hearing a lot about here.
This wasn't at CES, but Deloitte published a study yesterday, so during CES, about it's a global study, and part of it asked how consumers think about AI in their vehicles and if they're concerned. And most of them said that they really do want these safety features, these ADAS features, and they're willing to pay extra to get them, but they are nervous about who has their data. They pretty much trust no one to have their data, the automakers, the dealers, financial service companies. So that's really like, that's the tricky part is, you might be comfortable with these services that will protect you, but then, they face another risk with having your data out there. So it seems to be top of mind for the industry and for consumers who are in the market.
I'm curious, Hannah, if consumers trust Google, Amazon, Apple more than automakers, dealerships. Like that seems to be a divide, and I'd say
Yeah.
they do trust. That'd be my guess is they trust the big tech companies more, which
I don't think that was, I'd have to go back and look, but I don't think that was an option for them to select if they trusted them. But yeah, it was interesting. They want that technology, willing to pay, lacking trust, and then they're also still very nervous about autonomous vehicle technology, about robo taxis on their roads and commercial AVs on their roads. And the numbers really didn't change compared to 2020, which is the last time that Deloitte asked the question. So I thought that was interesting. The technology has advanced so much, but the sentiment around it hasn't really.
Before we run out of time, I do want to touch on Afila, the Sony Honda mobility product. More incremental. I don't think they changed the sheet metal or anything from last year, but they're ready to go to market. They are coming in 2025, and they announced their price, which is very high. Very curious move in light of what we've been seeing in the EV market. And they said they're going to go direct to consumer. So I guess I'm curious. I'd like to hear what Jack and Hannah, for instance, think about it. Jack, because you cover Scout and Volkswagen, which was trying to go direct to consumer despite VW dealers not liking that. It was presumed that the Honda dealers are going to be equally frustrated with Sony Honda Mobility's plan to sell Afila direct to consumers. What do you make it? What's the status of that? And do we think the companies are going to be able to do what they want to do?
Yeah, that's the big question. I mean, in the case of Scout, Scout's argument is that they're independent of Volkswagen Group, that they're not just another Volkswagen Group brand. But, and this is the but, Volkswagen Group funded Scout. They're the shareholder. It's kind of hard to really base that. So that's where like a lot of dealer angst comes from, is the fact that, hey, we've been a Volkswagen, Audi, Bentley dealer, for years. Now we can't sell these products. So we've already seen, basically from when Scout first showed their cars in October, a lot of anger, upset feelings. That's only kind of intensified. I guess I haven't really seen it yet with Honda dealers, but I would think it's going to be something similar. I mean, in some ways it's a little bit different because Honda already has EVs. They already have, it's not like a body-on-frame truck that Volkswagen dealers have wanted for decades. So maybe that's part of like the lack of the noise. But I mean, it's still a similar argument for the dealers. So I would imagine that's something that they'll be, we'll be hearing a lot more of at NADA later this month. So stay tuned for the next LinkedIn Live on that. But yeah, it'll be interesting with Scout and Fila going forward.
I'll be interested to see how many they can actually sell because of that price tag, because there's been such a demand for affordable EVs in the market. That's the way to grow the market. Most people aren't buying vehicles, EVs or not, at that price. So I'll be interested to watch and see if this is just kind of their starting point where they show the world what they can do, what they're capable of, and then they launch other models at lower price points. But yeah, that's definitely a tough sell at that price.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's super high price. I think it's one of those things. So many companies. I think this idea got started during the COVID bubble, when there was a lot of enthusiasm for EVs, but also just a lot of money in the market, low interest rates, not any place else to spend it, and some companies, I think, got the inaccurate idea that there was infinite demand for $100,000 EVs, and they're just the latest company to come to market, at the wrong time with the wrong price. But we'll see. I mean, it has some spectacular technology. We'll see if it catches on, and maybe they can bring it down from 110 to 90 and then down to 70 and 50. We'll see. Pete, I know you have to go. Do you have any final thoughts? Is there anything you want to make sure you say before we wrap up?
I guess the one thing from CES we've not covered yet is Toyota did a good deal of talking about their woven city plans, and they're going to bring the first residents into phase one later this year. I thought that was really interesting. And, again, back to the, that's something that's been incremental over a few years now that they've been talking about. But, they've gone from vision to something that's really happening here in 2025. And I did want to flag that I thought that was a good development here. Akio Toyota was here talking about that in Las Vegas. And, that's one more interesting aspect of CES this year that, back to like no huge headline out of that, but it is something that's really happening. And I think that's important to note.
Thanks, Pete. If you need to take off, we'll let you go. I want to get final thoughts from Hannah and Jack too before we wrap up. But thanks so much. Thanks for all your work. Thanks for helping, plan everything, and of course being connected with everybody in this high-tech industry.
I guess I'll say the show's not done yet. We still have two more days on the ground. So thanks, Jamie, and I hope everybody who's watching and listening checks out the live blog of everything happening here at CES on autonews.com.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Pete.
Hannah, did you have a takeaway or anything that you want to make sure we touch on before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think we've touched on it in a few different ways, but the show really shows how AI is reshaping the auto industry with these players like NVIDIA and Qualcomm, and how AI is informing autonomous vehicles. I think, you know, we talk about and think about artificial intelligence so often, and there's people who market their AI products that, you know, it is kind of just a marketing campaign, but this is where we're seeing the real deal. Like, this really is AI, and it's bringing new things to life that are really cool. I understand why not many automakers attended. It's not really a car show, but I hope that they're there. Like, I hope that they're walking the floor and they're really taking in this technology, and we see them signing onto these partnerships, and that will really push the industry forward in a new way that I think a lot of people really want to see and want to be a part of.
Great, thanks. Jack, what struck you? What's your takeaway?
Yeah, I guess, one thing, kind of going back to the powertrain conversation we were having earlier, one thing that struck me, so Scout Motors is here. They have an exhibit outside the hall, and both of the Scouts on display are the extended range version, not the EV, which is super interesting because up until October, Scout had told us this is an EV only company. We're not doing anything else. And now here they are at CES with highlighting their EREV, which they have said has a lot of interest. That seems to be a majority of the hand raisers, but it kind of really speaks to how quickly things can change. This was 2 years ago. The thought of a extended range Scout would have been crazy because from the onset back in 2022, it was going to be EV only. So that really struck me yesterday that they're here, they're trying to get the brand out, but it's for this, essentially plug-in hybrid version of their trucks. So kind of goes back to the whole powertrain, conversation. It's a lot different than it was, in years past.
Yeah. Hey, we do have a couple more questions or comments from the audience I want to run by you two. One was a little more of a statement, but I think it kind of banks off of what you were saying, Jack. Alex says, my take on EVs this year is companies following through on production commitments for EVs, concepts and prototypes announced at previous shows. Like nothing new, but if you've already started the ball rolling, you're going to finish the launch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like with Honda, they announced those last year, now showing more details this year, announcing more details on their plans around the EVs this year. So yeah, I would agree with that. And then also, like Jack was saying, with Scout and a bunch of other brands outside of CES, we are seeing that shift a little bit away from EVs and toward hybrids, and seeing hybrid sales in the last month and last quarter really grow. So the powertrain conversation is definitely around the industry at CES and really everywhere.
It was funny, similar to this, I was one of my interviews this week was with Lee Malloy from Cox Automotive. She's their EV battery person, and she made the point they think that EV sales are going to grow even if the tax incentives go away this year. We'll see how that turns out, but part of the thinking is there are 15 new EVs ready to enter the market that weren't there before, and customers do respond when they have something new and different to choose from. So we'll see how that goes, but again, probably more finishing off plans that were already announced rather than launching new EVs. So maybe 15 this year, maybe not as many in the 2-3 years out. We'll see how that goes. And one other one, Joe asks if there are any predictions for NAIAS in the next few weeks. Expecting something different compared to CES. All right, Joe, here's the thing. It's no longer the North American International Auto Show. They gave up that name. They are the Detroit Auto Show again. It is, expectations are very low. It's really tonight Ford is doing something. They say they'll have some news about their winning lineup. That's the wording they've been using. And so we'll see what that is. Maybe some powertrain news for vehicles that already exist, but it doesn't sound like they're going to do any vehicle debuts. Tomorrow, there are no automaker press conferences scheduled. This is the media day. There's going to be the NACTOY Awards. There's going to be Eyes on Design. No GM press conference, no Stellantis, no Toyota. There's some stands at the show, but this has really become just a regional Detroit show for local auto dealers to try to show what they've got to customers in a non-threatening environment and try to gather their emails and phone numbers. So I don't know if anyone else has anything they want to add to that. That's kind of where that show stands.
Yeah, I ran into a media friend here last night. He was headed back home, and I was going to Detroit tomorrow solely for the NACTOY thing. That's his only reason to go, was for that. So I mean, that's just such a drastic change. I started as an intern in January 2015. That was one of like the last big great Detroit shows with the Ford GT, the Acura NSX, and now it's a regional show in just 10 years. So it really speaks to how quickly it has changed. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if NACTOY is the biggest story of the year out of the auto show,
yeah,
it's just not the show it used to be.
right.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. It's we are out of time. We're past our time. Thanks for sticking with us. That will do it for today. I want to thank our production team: Rudy Short, Dean Storm, Tierra Riddick, Terry Kostrowski, Tom Carl, Kellen Walker, and Jake Neer. For Hannah, Pete, Jack, and everyone here at Automotive News, I'm Jamie Butters. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
All right.
Cool.
We good?
Awesome.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. See ya.
Seat of my pants the entire way. I didn't have any questions written.
You did great, Jamie. All
Yeah,
right.
good job. All right. Bye.
All right. See ya. Bye.